Good evening, everyone. I'm Christina, and I am one of your FVC Executive Assistant. Welcome to our Altus Suite for Applicant Information session. We hope that everyone did great in their final exams. For those of you who do not know, CASPer stands for Computer-Based Assessments for Sampling Personal Characteristics. This online evaluation will be administered by the organization that we are here with today, Altus Assessments. CASPer, along with a virtual personal interview using Microsoft Teams, is the new platform that the OVC will be using to replace the multiple meeting interviews as a result of the pandemic this year. Today, we have the honor to invite two guest speakers, Kare Tonning, who is the Support Operation Coordinator, and Vivian Huang, a research scientist from the Altus Assessments. The purpose of Altus is to give the institutions meaningful insights of their applicants and help them make key academic decisions. Our speakers will provide us an overview of the Altus Suite, which is made up of CASPer and SNAPSHOT for the upcoming 2021 to 2022 admission cycle. During the presentation, we ask that you keep your microphones and cameras off. We'll open up the floor for questions afterward. If you have a question during the presentation, please type it in the Q&A session and our speakers will answer them. Thank you very much again to our amazing speakers today, and we hope that you all find the session helpful.
Perfect. Thank you so much for the warm introduction, Christina. Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. I hope everyone's keeping healthy, happy, and safe. My name is Mandy Kaur. I'm the Community Marketing Manager here at Altus Assessments, and I'll be your moderator today. We're very excited to have the opportunity to talk to all of you about Altus Suite and how it plays a role in your admissions applications. Our goal for this webinar is to have you feeling very confident for the upcoming admission cycle with an understanding of the suite. And our collective goal is to make sure that you have a positive testing experience. On the next slide, you'll see that this webinar will be catering to Canadian applicants for their 2021-2022 cycle. However, if you're applying to programs in other countries, this information will still be applicable to you. Please note that you can always contact our support team by using the orange chat bubble in the bottom right-hand corner of takealtus.com or on your Altus Suite account. Before we do get started, I want to go through a few housekeeping items. If you do have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A function in Zoom, and we'll answer all your questions at the end. If you would like to chat with other classmates, please change the to function in the chat window from all panelists to all panelists and attendees. And of course, you will be receiving a recording of this webinar, so don't worry about writing everything down. And on the next slide, I'll share with you what you'll be covering today. So we're going to first go through why programs have chosen to use Altus Suite. Then we'll go through logistics and what to expect. The third part is how rating works. And then the one most of you are very interested in is how to prepare. And with that, I'll hand it over to Vivian.
Hi, everyone. So Altus Suite for Canadian is composed of CASPer and SNAPSHOT, like we mentioned. So CASPer is an online situational judgment test, and SNAPSHOT is a one-way video response tool that allows you to share more about yourself to programs. Duet is a value alignment assessment that compares what you value and what the program has to offer. So please note that the Duet is not, the Duet portion of the Altus Suite is not offered to Canadian health science programs, such as veterinary medicine for the upcoming 2021 to 2022 admission cycle. Since we don't have much time here, so I'm going to dive right into why programs like the ones that you're applying to have decided to use Altus Suite. So many programs want to select students who are not only strong academically, but also have the personal and professional characteristics necessary to succeed in the field. This means selecting students that have excellent communication and problem-solving skills, empathy, and motivation, as well as good grades. Academic metrics like the GRE or the MCAT only tells programs about one side of an applicant. These measures don't really capture the qualities that predict professionalism issues, which make up the majority of patient complaints in practice, and many programs want a more holistic view of who their applicants are beyond their grades. Traditionally, programs have used tools like personal statements or essays and reference letters to screen for these characteristics before deciding who to invite for interview, but these measures aren't perfect. So research has shown that traditional screening tools like reference letters and personal statements have little to no predictive value or reliability to tease apart the good from the bad applicants. They often contain buzzwords from program websites and all tend to sound the same. They also tend to advantage students with connection and knowledge of the system. So for example, from family members who are working in the field. So questions asked on these non-academic measures tend to be about describing the behavior. So oftentimes it will start with, tell me about a time when you did something. But these are also make these answers Googleable, which means that applicants will often try to tell admission committees what they want to hear rather than giving a picture of their true self. Admission committees want to know who you are, and this doesn't usually come through with personal statements and reference letters when everyone tends to write the same thing. So CASPer, on the other hand, provides a standardized and reliable measure that programs can use to compare their applicants' non-academic characteristics. By imposing a time limit, CASPer elicits authentic responses, unlike personal statements, where you have weeks or even months to revise your response. CASPer requires you to think on your feet just like you would in real life. This means that it's easier for programs to really differentiate between applicants. Situational judgment tests, or SJTs, like CASPer, have been shown to predict for future performance, unlike personal statements and reference letters. So this includes predicting performance on some licensure exams and performance on clinical evaluation in program. Introducing a tool like Altus Suite, programs are able to understand their applicants beyond just book smart. They are able to really dig deeper, providing applicants with a platform to demonstrate their strengths in the competency areas outside of science and knowledge. This can be particularly important for the applicants who just meet cognitive cutoffs. They can use Altus Suite to boost their chances of securing an interview spot and sometimes even acceptance into the program.
Awesome. Thanks, Vivian. So now I'm going to jump into discussing the logistics of Altus Suite. So once a program decides to adopt Altus Suite, typically they will direct their applicants to take altus.com, where Altus Assessments runs all the components of the suite. So this means that we verify applicant accounts, we provide testing accommodations, administer, and also score the CASPer test all through the account that you will create on takealtus.com. As an applicant, you will be required to register for an Altus Suite account, schedule your own test, and also pay the associated fees. We do know how expensive the application process can be. Applicants are asked to pay hundreds of dollars on test fees, prep courses, application fees, etc. So we have done our best to make sure that the Altus Suite is as accessible as possible. So for Canadian programs, the cost is a $40 base testing fee and a $12 per distribution fee to send your scores to programs. So for example, let's say you're applying to 2 veterinary programs in Canada. The total cost will be $64, which is equal to the $40 in the test base fee and $24 in distribution fees for the 2 programs. I also wanted to quickly highlight accommodations. So if you require testing accommodations for any component of your Altus Suite, think things like extra time. We will do our best to accommodate your needs. You can apply for accommodations by reaching out to our support team by using the orange chat bubble that was mentioned earlier on our website, or you can also send an email to support@altus.as. So you can find the accommodation request form as well as all of the information about our policy in the accommodation section of our website's FAQ. And also just keep in mind that you must submit your request to us at least 3 weeks prior to your desired CASPer test date. So we're now going to talk about how you determine what test dates are offered. So from the takealtus.com website, you'll be able to register your Altus Suite account. And this is also where you can browse the dates and fees page to view a listing of test dates and times for each program. So to do this, you'll first need to click on the dates and fees tab at the top of the page, which you can also see at the top of this slide. And then you'll select the Browse Test Dates and Times button you see circled down at the bottom. From there, you can view the test dates by following the steps that are presented to you on that page. So you'll first select the country where the program is located, the language of the program you are applying to, the types of programs you're also applying to, and then the individual schools of your choice. So once you've made all those selections, some information will appear.
So first, you'll see the last test date available to you for your selection. And then underneath that, you'll see a table that contains all scheduled test dates and times for each program. Please keep in mind that these test times are listed in the Eastern time zone or the local time zone in Toronto, Canada. So you will have to account for that if you're taking the test from a different location. In this table as well, you'll also see the distribution deadline for each school. That is the last date that you can send your Altus Suite result to them. And then additionally, what's important on this table is the ID requirements column. And so that will list if there are any ID requirements for the programs you have selected. And then I also just wanted to point out that the dates listed on this page for the Ontario Veterinary College are not the dates that are going to be offered for the upcoming 2021-2022 admission cycle. Those dates will be posted in July and you'll be able to browse them once they're posted. So you can also view the participating programs and their test dates when reserving your Altus Suite in your account. So obviously first you'll have to create your account at account.takealtus.com. And then once you're signed into that account, you'll simply need to click the Reserve Altus Suite button on the home page of your account. It'll be pretty big and really hard to miss, I promise. From there, the process is pretty much the same as what I discussed on the dates and fees page on the website. So you'll select the country where the program is, the language, program types, and then the schools that you're applying to. The only difference here is that some programs require a student or application ID number that they use to link your results to your actual application. So you may need to enter that as well when you're reserving your test. And then just remember, if you're unsure about what the ID requirement is, you can check on the dates and fees page in that table. Also, just keep in mind that if you're applying to multiple programs that do require the same CASPer test type, you will only need to reserve one Altus Suite. And so this is because you'll be able to add all of the programs to your distribution list that require that same test type. And once you choose your desired test dates for the programs you're applying to, you'll then be prompted to pay for your Altus Suite. And then once you pay and everything is reserved, you'll be automatically registered for SNAPSHOT. And this will also be visible to you on your test confirmation that you receive and also on the homepage of your Altus Suite account. And so just remember that you need to complete CASPer on the exact date and time of your reservation. But in contrast, there is no specific time when you need to complete SNAPSHOT, but you can only access it after you've reserved CASPer and up to 10 days after completing your CASPer test. After that, you won't be able to access it any longer. So now that we've covered kind of the reservation process, we'll talk a little bit about the components that make up Altus Suite for Canadian applicants, CASPer and SNAPSHOT. And I just wanted to point out again here that, as Vivian mentioned earlier, the assessment called Duet is only available for US medical programs, so it will not be a requirement for Canadian programs during the upcoming 2021-2022 cycle. So yes, we'll first start going over CASPer. So as mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, the CASPer test is an online video-based situational judgment test, or SJT for short, that screens people for their people skills. So you take the test on your own from a personal computer or laptop that has a working webcam and microphone. So this is a strict requirement of CASPer because we do have a proctoring and security measures set up to monitor applicants as they take the test. So I will also take a moment to say that your CASPer test must be taken alone, and any form of cheating or violations of our terms of use could result in your CASPer test and score being invalidated or withheld from the programs on your distribution list. And CASPer can also only be taken once per test type per application cycle. So it's in your best interest to act with integrity and not jeopardize your test results. So just make sure you take your test alone. In terms of the format, the CASPer test is made up of 12 sections, which include 8 video-based scenarios and 4 word-based scenarios that are delivered to you in random order. The scenarios are everyday situations that everyone can relate to, so they require no specific knowledge of the program or profession you're applying to, so as not to bias or advantage anyone. And then following being presented with this scenario, you'll then be given 30 seconds to reflect on what you just viewed or the word-based statement that you just read. And then you'll proceed on to the response page, where you'll be asked to answer 3 open-ended questions that relate to the scenario that you were presented. And so you'll have 5 minutes to respond to all 3 questions that are presented to you on that page. And then after the 6 sections, there is an optional 10-minute break. So this is a time where you're able to get up, you can stretch your legs, go to the washroom, you can eat a snack. You don't have to be in full view of the webcam for this 10-minute period, so you can get up and leave the room if you wish. And you also don't have to take the whole 10 minutes again if you don't want to. So if you'd like to continue on with the remaining 6 sections, you can absolutely do so. And so with that, I'll pass it back to Vivian now, who will provide you with some more information about CASPer.
Thanks, Kara. So CASPer, like Kara mentioned, is a unique form of situational judgment tests, or SJT, where you're presented with a scenario and asked how you would react. And this is specifically designed to help select the best candidates for healthcare programs. A lot of features of the test were specifically designed to make it more fair and accessible to all students, with the goal of widening access to healthcare programs to all students. So the test is online, so you can take it on your personal computer, removing the need to travel to a testing center. And this makes the test lower cost and gives wider access for all applicants, which is really relevant now due to COVID. And CASPer scenarios are not based on specific workplace situations, concentrating on general people skills rather than learned knowledge. So the test doesn't favor applicants who already have experience in the field. The test asks how you would respond to the situation using constructed response, so that's open-ended and typed format, rather than a multiple choice format, and why you choose what to do is more important than what you choose to do, so there are no right or wrong answers. This helps us really tease apart differences between applicants, unlike multiple choice tests where everyone's scores tend to pile up at the on the high end of the scale. For these and other reasons, CASPers tend to show smaller differences for minority students than traditional standardized tests like MCAT or GRE. That being said, we recognize that no standardized test is going to be perfect, and we're continuously looking for ways to make the test more equitable. And one way we hope to do this is with webinars like this to give you all the information that you need to succeed, so you don't need to rely on third-party information. CASPer scenarios are designed to assess personal and professional characteristics related to 10 competencies valued by professional health sciences programs: collaboration, motivation, communication, problem solving, empathy, professionalism, equity, resilience, ethics, and self-awareness. The content of each test is unique, but the 12 scenarios are carefully selected to ensure that the scenarios related to each of these competencies are included.
Awesome, thanks, Vivian. So now let's talk about what the test actually looks like. So here's an example of a video-based scenario, and it will look just like this during your test. So to break it down a little bit, your role in the scene is indicated at the top of the video, and then the video will play automatically. So you don't have the ability to pause, replay, or rewind the video. So it's super important to be focused, maybe use headphones in to block out any noise, and just to really pay attention to the scenario. You will also have the option to toggle on closed captioning for the videos if you wish. You can take notes during your test about the details of the scenario. However, you are not allowed to bring any pre-written notes to your test. And then once the video has finished, you'll be given 30 seconds to reflect on the scenario, and then you'll automatically be redirected to the response page. So this is the exact same process for word-based scenarios, which means that instead of the video, you'll be given a prompt to read. So you'll be able to read the question or statement, reflect for 30 seconds, and then view the question set and reply for up to 5 minutes. There's a few other things on this page that I would like to note. So the first is that orange chat bubble that we've mentioned a few times in the webinar. So as you can see, it's at the bottom right-hand side of the screen. So if at any point during your testing experience you have a technical issue, you can reach out to our support agents who are there to help you. If you require assistance during your test, it is best to reach out while you're on the pages that present a video or word scenario, so on the pages that look like this. That's because if you use it during this page, the timer will pause momentarily. If you do so on the 30-second and 5-minute time pages, the timer could continue to count down and you will lose some time. And then the last thing I just wanted to point out as well was at the bottom, you can see a progress bar. And so that just allows you to see how you're moving through the test. So following that 30-second reflection time, you will be directed to the response page that looks exactly like this. The prompt will also be displayed again at the top, just as a reminder, so you can refer to it. You can see all 3 questions at once, so take some time to read them and plan your responses accordingly. Do keep in mind that there are no right or wrong answers. The questions are open-ended, so reply however you see fit and try to demonstrate how you would respond to the scenario, as well as why you would respond in that way. This will help to show your unique perspective on the scenario. So for example, Vivian and I may choose to take the same action on a given scenario, but why we take that action may be drastically different. So it's very important to explain your motivation. And then also on this page, just note the countdown timer at the top of the page so you can keep an eye on how the 5 minutes is progressing. Just again, as a reminder, you will have 5 minutes to reply to all 3 questions. So if you finish before the 5 minutes is complete, you can press the submit button and proceed on to the next scenario if you wish to do so. But again, if the timer runs out before you finish typing, which is very common, you will automatically be directed to the next scenario and your responses will be automatically saved. So I'll hand it back over to Vivian now, and she'll tell you a little bit about what happens to your test after it's complete.
Thanks. So once you have completed all 12 sections of the CASPer test, your responses will be submitted to the appropriate group of CASPer raters to be evaluated. The raters for your test will be from Canada and come from a diverse range of background, culture, and profession. The goal is for the rater pool to be representative of the patient population. Every response a rater sees is anonymized and to avoid any cultural, racial, or gender biases. Raters also don't know how you did on your GPA or your MCAT or other standardized tests. They also don't know if you receive a testing accommodation. They do not get details about your name, race, gender, age, etc. They're only rating you based on the typed response that you have submitted for a given scenario. So raters actually go through training and certification before they begin rating and are provided feedback on a regular basis. We constantly monitor rater performance to ensure that we measure agreement with other raters and plan attention checks to ensure raters are paying close attention and to make sure raters are assigning an accurate score in line with our CASPer competencies. So raters are trained to focus on the content of the responses, the meaning behind the responses, as well as how they relate to the CASPer competencies for that particular scenario. We drive home the point that just because an applicant has written a significant amount of text doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good response. Likewise, just because an applicant has given a short response doesn't necessarily mean that it's a poor response. So raters are trained to disregard spelling, English proficiency level, length of a response, or cutoff or incomplete sentences. They know applicants are under strict time constraints, so none of these factors should be considered when assigning a score. Raters are also trained to be flexible when evaluating responses. So instead of being given a strict rubric to evaluate responses, they are given guidelines and the flexibility to assign a high score even if the applicant takes their answer in a completely different direction than the questions are intended. The benefit of an open-ended assessment is that there are no right or wrong answers, allowing applicants to really explain why their answer is the best for them based on their experience and context. And the way that CASPer is rated is there are 12 independent raters who are scoring your CASPer responses. This means that your CASPer score is a result of 12 unique individual impressions. So there's one rater per scenario, and no rater will see more than one response from any given applicant. So instead of rating your test the whole way through from sections 1 to 12, each rater is focusing on one particular scenario section for multiple different CASPer applicants. So maybe one rater see a series of responses for just scenario 5, for example. So rating applicant responses for the same scenario over and over allows a rater to give a score for your response that is relative to your peers. This is important because it allows the programs that you are applying to have a sense of how you're doing relative to your peers and the entire applicant pool. Prior to rating applicant responses, raters are assigned to a particular scenario and provided with relevant instruction, background knowledge and theory, as well as some guiding questions about the scenario and what competencies the scenario is probing for. I will note that applicants are not penalized if they mention competencies that are outside of the ones that the scenario is probing for. The score that you're given per scenario is based on a Likert type scale, so you'll receive a number from 1 to 9, 1 being poor, 9 being excellent, for each of the 12 scenarios. From here, every applicant will be given a raw score based on the 12 unique scores from the 12 raters, which is then converted into a single Z-score for your programs to use to see how an applicant is performing relative to the rest of the applicant pool.
Awesome. So that covers off what we wanted to share about CASPer. So we'll switch over to talking about SNAPSHOT. So in addition to CASPer, applicants are required to complete SNAPSHOT as part of their Altus Suite. SNAPSHOT is a one-way video interview tool that highlights your communication skills and motivation, and also offers programs an additional piece of information about you. So it's made up of 3 interview-style questions and can be completed anytime after you've reserved your Altus Suite and up to 10 days after completing your CASPer test. After that 10 days is up, you will no longer be able to access SNAPSHOT within your account. And it should only take roughly 15 minutes to complete SNAPSHOT. There we go. So you might be asking yourself a little bit how SNAPSHOT works. So you'll access SNAPSHOT from within your Altus Suite account, and you'll first begin with a quick systems check to ensure that your device will be able to run SNAPSHOT properly. This is important because you'll only get one chance to complete it. So you'll then be asked to complete a practice SNAPSHOT with 2 practice questions. This practice section is mandatory, and it will help you get familiar with the format and prepare for the real thing. Unlike the real questions, you will have the opportunity to play back your recordings and even re-record them, which will allow you to check your audio and video to make sure everything is working properly before continuing. And also you can do the practice test questions as many times as you would like. So finally, you can begin the real SNAPSHOT like once you've finished the practice. You'll be presented with a question and have 30 seconds to read it and reflect before the recording actually begins. Once the recording begins, you'll have up to 2 minutes to record your video response, but you can stop the timer if you finish early by hitting the submit button to move to the next question and repeat the process. You will not be able to review your responses or re-record them. And after you complete SNAPSHOT, you'll just hit the final submit button and your responses will be sent to the programs on your distribution list. The same technical tips apply for CASPer and SNAPSHOT. So first of all, only use Chrome or Firefox on a computer with a webcam and microphone. However, unlike CASPer responses, which are anonymized and rated by our team of raters, your SNAPSHOT video responses will be sent directly to the programs to review. Some additional tips to help SNAPSHOT go smoothly consist of trying to minimize audio and visual distractions. So you might want to avoid wearing distracting patterns for your attire and background, and also make sure you find a quiet area to record. Make sure you look at the camera when you're speaking as if you were in a real interview setting. Make sure to take advantage of the practice SNAPSHOT. So if you feel like you want to go through it a second or third time, absolutely do so. And also just remember that you only get one try at SNAPSHOT. So if you're interrupted or get distracted, try to recompose yourself and keep going just as you would in real life in a real interview setting.
Okay, So there's a guaranteed 2 to 3 week turnaround time for CASPer scores to be delivered to schools. We work very closely with the program to align the test dates with this rating period in mind, so that they are always fit in within the program's admissions timelines. So if you're able to take a test and distribute to a particular program, it means that your score will be delivered and considered accordingly. I'll also note that CASPer score delivery system is not always fully integrated with the program's admissions platforms. So there may be a delay by a week or so, and when your Altus Suite account shows that your score has been delivered, and when all the individual programs indicated that they have received a score. So please be patient while your programs upload the score and update your CASPer status on their end. Another question we get is like, why do I not receive my Altus Suite scores? Each school used each assessment from Altus Suite differently, but this information is not yet public. And new for this application cycle, so based on a lot of applicant feedback starting this year, all applicants will receive information about the quartile that they place in for CASPer only as part of an ongoing pilot for providing applicants with more information about their CASPer test. However, no scores will be given for SNAPSHOT, as each school uses SNAPSHOT differently. So now I'll pass it back, the webinar back to Kara to talk about how you can prepare for your Altus Suite.
Awesome, thanks, Vivian. So yeah, we'll finish up this webinar with some additional tips on how to maximize success and prepare for your Altus Suite. So the first tip is to familiarize yourself with the format of each of the Altus Suite's components. So there is a complete 12-section sample test available in the CASPer section of your Altus Suite account. Our research team has also found that applicants who try the sample test tend to have higher CASPer scores compared to those who didn't try it. So we definitely recommend that you complete it. There's also a practice version of SNAPSHOT, like we went over, so where you can get familiar with the format and also check your audio and video quality. And then we also do have a lot of helpful information on our takealtus.com website. I recommend checking out our test prep page, the FAQ page, and also our resources page. The second important tip is to begin your test worry-free. So a few things to do in order to start your test worry-free is to reserve your Altus Suite at least 3 days in advance. Sometimes payment and processing or ID verification can take a bit of time, so the sooner you reserve, the better. Also, some applicants actually reserve months in advance as well, so last-minute bookings or last-minute reservations are definitely not recommended or guaranteed. Be sure you're using a computer with a working webcam, microphone, and stable high-speed internet. And also make sure that you're only using Chrome or Firefox to access our website or complete Altus Suite. Other browsers such as Safari or other devices such as like tablets or phones are not supported and often experience issues. Another tip is to try the system requirements check and sample test available within your account. These will give you a very good indication of whether your device is suitable to complete Altus Suite. It's also a good idea to try these well before your actual test day so that you have time to fix any issues if you do have any problems. It's also a good idea to try it again on the day of your test just to make sure everything's still working properly. And then also on the day of your test, you should restart your computer. This sometimes helps clear out any lingering technical issues. And finally, find a quiet place where you can take the test alone with no distractions. I'll also note here that please don't hesitate to chat with our support team either before, during, or after CASPer if you do have any questions at all by using that chat bubble. We're absolutely here to help. Tip number 3, I guess, is to use all the time that you are provided. So on CASPer, try to use the full 5 minutes when responding to the 3 questions per section. If you finish your responses before the 5 minutes are up, it's a good idea to read over your answers and see if there's anything you could add or clarify. Maybe there's more that you can say to explain why you would choose this stance you did. And then just remember that once that 5 minutes is up, you'll be automatically moved to the next section and you will not be able to review the answers for the previous section. Keep in mind that raters are looking for your motivation for taking a position, not just the position itself. So it helps to explain your reasoning as completely as possible within the given time. We've also found that applicants who use all 5 minutes when responding tend to score higher on CASPer than those who move on to the next section before their time is up. So we do recommend you use all the time you have. And also, raters are trained to ignore spelling and grammar errors, and they won't penalize you for incomplete thoughts or sentences. And then on that same topic, don't panic if you don't finish your thought or if you run out of time during an answer. With a restricted amount of time to answer all 3 questions, it is common for time to run out while you're finishing up your thought. So if that happens, you'll be automatically moved to the next section as mentioned, but don't panic. This happens to a lot of people who are taking the CASPer test, and raters are used to seeing unfinished responses. If you run out of, if you run out of time or the 5-minute timer elapses and you're disappointed by your response, don't worry. Just take a deep breath, refocus, and try your best on the next section. Each section is evaluated by a different rater, as Vivian mentioned, and those raters have no idea who you are or how you performed on the past section. So don't be concerned if you feel like your answers were particularly weak for one of the sections, because you still have 11 other sections. And finally, I'll just share some general advice for a smooth test day. Some of these we've already mentioned, but I'll just repeat them a second time. First, double check your account details to verify all the information is correct, like any student ID or application ID numbers that you may have entered. Try the system requirements check and sample test on your account so that you can identify possible issues and have time to find a solution. Make sure that you have a working webcam, microphone, and are using high-speed internet. Ensure that you have the latest version of Chrome and Firefox installed and only use those browsers. We actually recommend having both of them available on your computer so you can switch from one to the other if one is giving you any issues. We recommend that you turn off any VPNs, firewalls, or browser extensions because these may cause issues with the test, like preventing you from connecting properly to it. And then another tip, which is pretty simple, but it's a really big one, is to double check the date and time of your test. All test dates and times are listed based on the time in Toronto, Canada, which uses Eastern Standard or Eastern Daylight Time. The takealtus.com dates and fees page, as well as all the receipts and emails that you'll receive from us, will list the time in either EST or EDT. But if you'll be completing the CASPer from a different time zone, you will need to account for any difference in time. So to help you a little bit with this, the account info page in your account will have 2 live clocks, which will show you any difference between your computer time settings and the official CASPer time. But yeah, as a general tip, just be very mindful of time zones and how they could impact you, because we really don't want you to miss your test. And then our last tip is that the refresh button is your friend. So a lot of common technical issues, like if a video freezes or something like that, often these are solved by just simply refreshing your page. But if you do, again, need any extra help, please make sure to reach out to us via the orange chat bubble, and we'll make sure to help you. Our live support team is absolutely here to help, and we know that taking any sort of test can be very stressful. So our goal is to help you get through the Altus Suite smoothly.